How's it going, everyone? Like I said, Shawn Garrett with Garrett PLLC. I am not going to stand up here and tell you what a business is, what an LLC is, or a corporation, because the majority of you in here likely know. Rather, what I'm going to do is talk kind of off the cuff, which is very scary for me. But we're going to get into the meat of a couple different matters that I've been researching and presenting on frequently over the last few months. Question, who in here has heard of the Corporate Transparency Act? Okay, few hands. A little intimidating because the federal government has not done a great job of putting out information regarding this act, but it affects every single business owner. Truthfully, whether you're a business owner or not, it affects every single person that supports businesses in the United States of America. So again, I'm not going to go too deep into what the Corporate Transparency Act is, but very high level. It's this act that the government put out by an agency named FinCEN, and it is to combat money laundering. That business owner that has a Montana LLC for his 18 supercars, and it's non-disclosed. That's really what this is trying to combat. They want to get through to figure out who the owners of entities are. So the Corporate Transparency Act, it's pretty convoluted, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of business owners feel like they do not have to report their information to FinCEN, this federal agency. Now, the information that needs to be reported is name, address, birthday, and a copy of your identification card, so passport or driver's license. Pretty intimidating to willingly and of your own volition submit that information to the federal government, but it's a requirement. And I don't have my slides today because I'm going off cuff, of course, but there are, I want to say 20 plus exemptions to this Corporate Transparency Act. And some of them are pretty broad. I don't have any CPAs in the room, right? Okay, good. Yeah, okay. A little caveat. But there's an exemption on there that just says accounting firms. And at face value, you would think, great, accounting firms. I'm an accounting firm. I am exempt. Well, that's not actually the case. If you are an accounting firm that is that supports public companies via the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. I don't know the quote off the top of my head, but it's a very specific exemption for accounting firms that actually meet that criteria. 98% of accounting firms don't. So we've got 98% of accounting firms, and that's just a broad number, don't quote me on that, but we've got a lot of accounting firms that are not meeting their Corporate Transparency Act requirement because they believe that they are not, that they're exempt, that they're not required to do so. So a lot of misinformation out there. One of the other exemptions is large companies. Literally, the term is large companies. Large companies are companies that have $5 million in revenue for the prior year, 20 plus employees, and a physical location in the United States of America. So if any one of those is not met, they are not a public company. So again, a lot of misinformation out there. Do your research. I say all that to say, get on an attorney's listserv or their email chain or on their LinkedIn. Attorneys are trying their best to put out this information if they are in the business law sector. But whether you are an estate attorney or if you are familiar with the business attorney, get on an attorney's email chain and we put out information gladly because we don't want malpractice. We try to put that information as best we can and say, listen, if you've got a trust that needs revisions due to this North Carolina law, we're going to tell you to do that. If there's a federal law coming down the pipeline that you need to be made aware of, do that. So that entire spiel was form a relationship with your attorney. Second thing, I don't know how much time I have, but the second thing I want to talk about, what's that? You got time. Okay, good. The second thing I wanted to talk about, and this really just comes down to the language, like John was talking about a second ago, when we're drafting documents, when we're, being hyper nuanced as attorneys tend to be, it's very important because language and words matter. There's this Delaware court case. It was a mergers and acquisitions case that was litigated a couple months ago up in Delaware. And the court, I'll give you the details of the case because I think it's interesting. This pharmaceutical company, they were doing research into a life-saving drug. Very, very high level. And they ended up selling their research and their entire, all of their assets to another entity. Now, in the asset purchase agreement, the purchasing company promised to continue on that research and stated that we will pay you further revenue based on the further research that we're able to achieve in good faith. And then they ended up selling to another entity. And the new entity, they said, we're not as interested in this. And so that revenue that was going to be generated went by the wayside. So this ended up getting litigated in Delaware, and the court honed in on one word in the asset purchase agreement and determined that the company, the middle company that had done the purchasing, had not acted reasonably and in good faith. So when it comes down to it, this asset purchase agreement or whatever document you're drafting today, it may not feel like this word is important, or it may not feel like what your attorney is discussing with you is important. I hear from my small business owners quite often, Shawn, we're very excited about this relationship. This isn't a big deal today. Okay, but what about tomorrow? What about the next purchase? What about the next sale? What about the next exit? So that's my spiel. Keep all that in mind.
What was the word?
I'll look it up. I'm going to get the microphone back, and I'll tell you. Corporate Transparency Act.
And how enforceable is it?
Oh, yeah. Well, federal government, they are able to enforce whatever they want to enforce. I'm very involved with the American Bar Association. A bunch of business attorneys get together twice a year, and we argue and discuss this ad nauseum. And one of the current arguments that we're having is how, one, the government's going to enforce this, and two, how they're even going to keep track of the fact that these entities exist and the fact that these documents were not filed. We believe, or again, this is all just belief and personal speculation, but the belief is that they're actually going to be able to plug into the Secretary of States for all 50 states, and they're going to be able to quickly run a check against the reports that they've received and the reports that they have not received. So then, of course, they've got a very clear, hey, on your taxes next year, we're fining you for, it's $591 per day. That's the inflation-adjusted amount that they've arrived at. Initially, it was $500. Inflation's creeping up on us, so now it's $591. That's the civil penalty. The criminal penalty is, I believe it's 10 grand and up to a year in prison. But again, words are important. The important factor when it comes to both the civil and criminal penalties are willful noncompliance. So willfulness is very important. How that's going to be demonstrated, I don't know. I wonder if it's going to be, knowledge of the fact that the act existed and a decision not to comply. However, the presentation I gave last week was to other attorneys, and I was discussing with them the fact that if they're advising their clients that they're exempt, I believe that the client will not have met the willful prong of that test. And so then I think that liability would transfer to the attorneys. So hopefully that doesn't,
Was it not suspended, the enforcement of it suspended for a period of time, but then put back? I remember getting something or seeing something in the news that, no, that's been held off, but then it's back again. Is that the case?
Again, a lot of misinformation with that. Off the top of my head, don't quote me. I know this is being recorded. So, if there's any other business attorneys, please, I'm on the spot here. But the federal court that stayed the action was only in regards to the entity that brought that case in the specific state that case was in. I believe it was in Alabama, but yes, that was not a blanket. Sometimes like with the student loan litigation that occurs, that's nationwide. That's not what happened here. The judge said in regards to this entity, it's specific to that entity. Yep. And I wrote an article about the word, so I'm going to look it up real quick and then I'll circle back.
So is there an actionable item that you're calling us to the carpet with as small business owners that you're suggesting to us?
In terms of the Corporate Transparency Act, file.
What's the deadline?
Shawn, correct me if I'm wrong, that applies to existing businesses already.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So in terms of the deadlines, the deadline for businesses that existed January 1st prior, January 1st, 2024 and before is December 31st, 2024. If you were in existence after, so let's say you filed January 1st, 2024 following, you've got 90 days this year to file. If you filed January 1st, 2025 or continuing forward, you've got 30 days. So as of this year, if you filed this year, if your business owners, clients filed this year, they have 90 days to comply. If you filed prior to 2024, you have until December 31st, 2024.
Is it going to take 5 minutes to file, or is it going to take 5 minutes to file? Or does it take too long?
Depends on how many owners are in your entity. The real caveat there is if you filed your business yourself, and again, I didn't want this to be we're answering questions, which is good. But, at the end of the day, if you filed your entity yourself, there's a slot on the application known as the company applicant. If you had an attorney file your business for you, or let's say you had LegalZoom do it, you have to go find their FinCEN ID number, and you have to use the actual company applicant's FinCEN ID number. So if your friend did it and they don't have a FinCEN ID number, it could take a little bit longer. If there are multiple owners, it could take a little bit longer. But if you are a sole owner of your business and you filed it yourself, 5-10 minutes.
You have some video that you've been told.
Yes, ma'am.
So, in terms of your practice, is it also employment contracts, non-competes, things like that? Do you do that as well?
Yes, ma'am. So we support business owners from formation all the way through to their exit, hopefully one day. But yeah, we help out with their non-compete agreements, non-circumvention agreements, with employees or owners, all the above.
Is there a cap to that fine, or does it continue to grow until paid?
I haven't seen a cap. I'm sure there will be eventually when it's litigated, but it's terrifying. It's scary. When I showed the attorneys that I was talking with about the emails that I send out to my clients, I have them automated, and I have my FinCEN ID number in there. I have the penalties, and I say, you have 90 days to do this. In all of my engagement agreements and my signature lines, you'll see I am not taking on this responsibility, because at the end of the day, it's up to them. These business owners, the responsibility should be on them. And I tell anyone B2B, whether you're a CPA, whether you're an accountant or an attorney, we don't want to take on this liability for someone else not taking this seriously. So I try to stress how serious this is.
And the red flags are, you got a report, and they screen it, and you get red flags, or if you're audited.
Yeah. So, and you're talking about how they may be fined. I truly think it's 2024. By the time it's time for them to start determining who owes a fine, they're going to be able to plug into the North Carolina Secretary of State. They're going to say this entity was formed July 1st. We still haven't received a BOI report, as they're known as. The fine's due, unless you have an exemption, which there are not a ton of exemptions that I see applying to small businesses.
This is the first year that it's been a requirement.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't miss it last year.
Is there an annual requirement to refile?
We don't know yet, but we are believing yes. So we believe that the way that the terminology is on the FinCEN website, it's the initial report. We don't anticipate an initial report without there being subsequent reports. So we do anticipate annual refilings. But also, if there are any changes to an entity structure or an address or an owner or anything like that, they then have 30 days to file an amended report. So again, it's the ongoing compliance. And I stress this to my attorneys and accountants. If you're representing a business and you're their general quote unquote counsel, general external counsel, as I end up being sometimes, and then they decide to place some type of substantial control with a manager of their entity, truthfully, via the plain reading of the statute or the act, that individual should be listed as a beneficial owner on the FinCEN report. Now, if I'm not aware of that and they just make that change and then 35 days pass by, but I'm responsible for filing and updating their BOI report, the question is, who's responsible for that 5 days of fines? So, and 5 days adds up quick. $3,000? I'm bad with math, so. Oh, sorry about that.
Going this way. All right.
Yep.
Fantastic. We got the slides kind of going somewhat. Yay. Something like that. So I'll kind of go through. And one of the things we wanted to kind of go through with the panel is really kind of talk through scaling your business and starting your business. There are some similarities with there as you're trying to move forward. So, of course, I cover the banking piece. Here, and banking is really important. So when I sit down with clients and they're looking and express an interest of growth, right? Wanting to expand, take on another headcount, take on a new facility, whatever the case may be, I'm like, well, you need to make sure you have your accountant / bookkeeper, your banker, and your attorney all by your side as you go ahead and scale. So that way you have all your bases covered and you can keep doing what you need to do. So in the banking world, what are some things that you got to consider? Well, there's quite a few things to kind of go through, and I kind of kept it high level is you got to pick the right institution for you. And what does that mean? So that could mean, what is it that you do? What's specific to what it is that you're trying to accomplish? Not all banks are built the same, though we follow the same guidelines and the same laws that are out there. We do have to go ahead and keep an eye on, does my bank support me in that instance? So if, like for Fifth Third, and I can say, because I'm on there, if your business is cannabis-based, hemp-based, anything like that, we may not be the right bank for you, right? There are some banks that do that a little better than we would. There are some banks that specialize in medical, right? So kind of understanding what that bank can do for you. What is it that I'm trying to scale? Does it make sense for my business? Am I trying to grow and to achieve a certain revenue target? Am I trying to achieve a certain client base? Am I trying to achieve, X, Y, Z? Well, I need to understand what can my bank do to support me in that aspect, right? What are the services that I'm going to need? So if I'm a big retailer, I'm going into 3 locations. I don't need to spend half my week collecting money from all 3 locations. Maybe I need a courier service, right? And can my bank support in doing that? Do I understand what my fees are? Not all fees are bad, and I write it on there for that reason, right? You just need to understand what your fees are, right? Just like any business owner, right? We get a plumber out here, a plumber's gonna have a fee for showing up. Same concept on the bank side, right? Banks have fees based on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. What are some of those fees that might look like? Or what is it I need to do? Something you kind of go through. How are you going to get paid, right? How's the money going to come in and out of that? And that's going to help determine this piece of it. If I'm going to do ACHs, right, and wires, I need to understand what those fees look like. And can my bank handle that capacity factor for you? Not all banks are built the same in that aspect. If you go to a credit union, there's great things about credit unions. They may have some limitations in this piece, right? And if you need to do business-to-business sales with a European company, can my bank send those euros out? And try to understand that piece. If I'm going up a little bit more, what are some of those other financial considerations? Is your locations, right? If I'm doing business, I'm opening up a retail store or I'm opening up a restaurant, do I want to do business on a bank that only has storefronts in California? If I'm in North Carolina, does that make sense for me? What makes sense, right? And trying to bring that through. Also kind of looking at what other products you might need from credit card processing, right? Because if you're not processing with credit cards and you're only taking cash or check, you might be secluding some customers that could want to do business with you. You also might be missing the opportunity to maybe raise your prices, bring in your revenue a little differently in that aspect, if you could bring in those credit cards piece for you. So just kind of going through that there, and then really kind of understanding what your accounts are that you're going to try to accomplish. So I'll get a client come in, they're like, hey, I started this business as a sole prop. I've been running this with my dad beforehand. I want to scale this up. I started an LLC. I want to kind of go through. I talked to Shawn. I got all my paperwork. I'm ready to go. Fantastic. First question I'm going to ask you is, what are we going to be planning on doing? How do you plan on getting paid and how do you plan on paying out? Because money in, money out is the #1 control fixture, right? So if you can't understand how to differentiate that, it's going to be really hard for somebody like Nikki or Todd to help you compare those financials to make better educated decisions on your marketing plan, right? Make it better educated on your recruiting plan. Those things only happen if you have revenue coming in. Also kind of looking through, and where I want to kind of spend a little bit more time is really on that business lending piece, right? Because if you're scaling your business and you're growing, you've been in business 2 years, and those of you that don't know, 2 years is typically that turnaround that banks want to look at, that you have revenue, you're in the black, you're showing good things, is that 2-year span. Now, can you get a loan without being open for 2 years? Absolutely. There are SBA loans and things like that can kind of go through. But in general, it's 2. And one of the biggest things in kind of looking through is how do I manage my capital, right? So I'm in business, I'm trying to buy this new truck, right? I need to get out and hire somebody, if I need to put them out in the field. Well, how am I going to pay for that? And do I have the financials to pay? So this is where talking to your banker makes a lot of sense. So if you're sitting down with me, I'm going to be able to kind of go through and go, hey, when do you want to buy that truck? What have you done thus far? Have you talked to an accountant? Do you have an accountant? Do you have an attorney? Have you thought through those things so we can put you in the best position possible? Because unfortunately, sometimes I'll get a client come in and their numbers they may be making money, but they may not be showing that they're making money, right? Tax litigation, kind of put it on the side there. Well, I need to be able to tell you that and be like, hey, you know what, Paul? You need to make sure that you show this on your tax report like this. right? And you can kind of set yourself up to be in that position, because really financing is really just knowing where you are and where you want to go, right? Being able to tell that financial story to the bank, and having a good banker behind you, regardless of whether you bank with me or not. You should have that dialogue in that relationship, right? It should not only be, yes, you could do everything online, but if you're a business owner really trying to scale your business, be able to add on people and really looking for capital, well, you need somebody you can trust and talk to and be able to kind of bounce those ideas off of. Because what you don't want to do is put yourself in a position where, A, the bank says no, right? Nobody likes that. Or even B, hey, I got it, but now I got all these fees and I don't understand what's happening, right? And be able to kind of understand, what am I paying for? Why am I paying it? Does it make sense? And am I making the money? So I can put myself in the best position possible to have that loan, make your growth, and be able to expand the way you want to and not miss a beat there. So, but yeah, that's my 2 seconds. Any questions? Pretty straightforward, I know. As we go through. We go through John's. So as we kind of go through and we talk through, John, who's unfortunately wasn't able to make it with us, he's our commercial real estate guy with Blanchette Realty. And some things he kind of wants to make sure we know and we touch point on for his real estate is when you're talking about expanding or starting your business, you may be talking about a location, right? And it may not always be a storefront location as far as like for retail, but think of warehouse space. Think about where you want to go and how long, right? Does those leap options make sense? If you're starting out something brand new, has never really been tried in the market, do you really want to sign a 10-year lease in case something doesn't work the way it worked you want it to? If you're starting a restaurant, does it make sense in the neighborhood zip code that you're putting it in, right? So if you're gonna do a multicultural restaurant in a certain neighborhood, understanding, is there a lot of competition in there, or is there a lot of ask for that? Because that's going to determine who's going to come in through those doors. And understanding those terms and lease options. On a budget perspective, you need to make sure that you understand what it is that you're paying for and how long you're going to be paying it, right? So if your budget is $4,000, but this lease is $5,000, well, you're going to have to adjust something. So being able to understand that. Also, it goes deeper than the rent, right? There's upfit costs, right? So if you're starting a new retail business, there's usually a lot more upscale to be able to supply the kitchen appliances. If you're doing a restaurant, tables, anything along those lines, making sure you act all these costs, and then your running costs, right? So if you're trying to expand and you're putting in not just a mortgage payment per se, just like anybody else on the personal side, that I factor in my utilities, my electric, gas, insurance, things like that we don't think about, but those are also factors in, does this location make sense for me, right? Am I going to get the return back to be able to go through? And then location. So one of the things John talks about is that traffic count, and your commercial real estate agent, why you want to work with one, just like on the residential side, is they can scale and kind of be able to give you those facts out there. So they should be able to go ahead and pull in and be like, hey, based on what we see, X amount of cars run through this road every day, X amount of people stop at this shopping center, X amount of people do this, and that way you can kind of go through and be able to pick a location that's going to best maximize your visibility. Because it's not always, hey, I build it comes. Sometimes I got to build it in the right spot so they can come out there for you. And then also understand where your competition is, right? Sometimes being next to your competition works. That's why you always usually see, I'll use the two big pharmaceutical companies out there, CVS and Walgreens, right? They're usually across the street from each other. Why? Because it drives business to both of them. So it's not always bad, but if you have maybe a different type of business, too many, say, Vietnamese restaurants, well, that could hurt you, right? Depending on what's out there. So be able to kind of understand that piece of it as well. I think Paul might be able to kind of talk a little bit, right? Because you just recently got into a new location not that long ago.
Yeah, I can talk real quick about that. John was very helpful as far as the location part of it. Was really helpful in managing and negotiating the lease. That was part of it. It was, in fact, I sent the lease up to our corporate, and the lady that looks through it, and she was real impressed. Was like, who helped you, who helped you with this? Because this is about the best lease we've seen on the NerdsToGo franchise side of things. So he is very knowledgeable. He has a big database that he works with to find those the right locations and bring that to the table when you're in the negotiation part of things. So, but I think that's pretty much John, right? Yeah. Oh, and he also does.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So you've seen the process.
Yes.
Does the database include tracking phones as far as traffic going into businesses? I know that there are business advisors out there that use phone traffic going in and out of businesses. Was that something that he
That's
locations?
I would have to ask him on that. I don't remember him bringing that up. Yeah, that's interesting.
Traffic, like
Right.
anticipated traffic for location. So I would imagine he might have something similar to that.
Yeah, and doing comps on in the other areas, like, well, this is what the leases are, or the rents are in this area. Why are you charging X number of too much, kind of thing. So yeah, he's very, very knowledgeable about that. So if you have any clients that you want to refer to, I strongly recommend John.
So about, everything here, and it's specific to, like, we're here as experts, but no matter what you're doing as you're scaling, is to make sure you have trusted people that you can talk to be able to provide you the right advice or give you the information you need to make the best decisions possible.
So one of the areas that I assist business owners in is making sure they're compliant with different aspects that are needed for their business. Compliance may be one way for one business, but different for another business. So helping that business owner understand what all those compliances are. Scaling wise, you may have a retail space that you have here in North Carolina, and you decide that you want to start selling on big commerce. And that then puts your retail items across the United States. There are compliance issues that happen with that and need to happen and scale with your business. There's caps in different states, so depending on what states you want to market to, there's compliance that needs to be met. Not just here in North Carolina, but federal agencies. So that's an important piece to having a good bookkeeper. They should know what those compliances are. I do service the entire United States, so I am familiar with a lot of the different states, how they operate, and the things that business owner will need to be in compliance with those areas. Sales tax is one of them. Having the right calculation. Is your POS system that you're using, or your CRM, is it even calculating the correct amount? I actually spoke with a client this morning who had realized they were filing their sales tax for September, just opened a separate location in the month of September, and they were only calculating the state portion of the tax and not the rest of it. So they need to have a good relationship. Business owners need to have a good relationship with their bookkeeper to be able to ask those questions. Now what do I do? I wasn't in compliance, so now what do I do? How do I handle it appropriately? Payroll services. There's a variety of payroll services. You're familiar with a lot of them, I'm sure, and each of them function differently. And a business owner may not need certain aspects of it. They may need certain pieces that are pivotal for the growth and scaling of that business. So having a bookkeeper who is familiar with how those softwares function, how they interact with their accounting software, can help them stay in compliance, make sure that they have the things that they need and that they're using the right company to do that. Quarterly tax payment estimates. Who qualifies for that? Who needs to be doing that? Do I have to make those payments, or can I just set that money aside? Are there penalties involved? That's a key area where a business needs to understand how they need to function, what those deadline dates are. That's key to a lot of the compliance, is just what date is that due by? I know I need to pay it. I know I need to apply for that type of compliance, but I don't know when it's due. I don't know how frequently I need to file. So helping with that. Merchant service, Joe takes care of that, but there are some accounting softwares that can take care of that for you. So understanding what those fees are. aside from compliance, when a business is scaling, it's important to understand, one, what accounting software they're using. Are we talking, I give my statements to my CPA, and that's your accounting method? Is that gonna help you grow? Is that gonna help you make educated business decisions? And two, is the accounting software that I'm using right now, is it providing me with the financials that I need to take to Joe to make sure that I can get the lending that I need or that line of credit? And three, is it user-friendly? Does it work for what my business needs? Does it offer me the features that I need to have in order to function and create an efficient workflow for my staff? 20% of time is spent for administrative duties on the bookkeeping piece. Business, that's a lot of time. Business owners are busy and they have other things that they need to focus on, particularly if you're scaling your business, because you're looking at new, different aspects of things that you need to be worried about, focused on growing. And so it's important to have the right accounting software that can also grow with your business. So having a good bookkeeper that knows how those softwares work and can make recommendations to you on how that's gonna look right now for you, for your staff, what you're going to be seeing, but then as your business grows, what it's going to look like and how it can move with you. And then some of the dangers that a lot of business owners aren't aware of. Well, I didn't know that I needed to do that or that it needed to be filed by that deadline. So now what does that mean? What penalties am I going to be looking at? And all of you know, I'm sure very well, that the government's a little bit behind when it comes to letting you know that you've missed something. So by the time they get to it, those fines and penalties are even higher. So having somebody understand how your business functions to be able to give you that advice and those recommendations. And then Joe knows this very well, having a distorted business value. Who's heard of garbage in, garbage out? It's true, right? If you're not putting anything in, then what are you evaluating your numbers are? But when garbage goes in, you're gonna be getting it out. So having a bookkeeper who knows how that all needs to fall on those financial statements. So when Joe looks at them, he sees your business making money and can lend you money, but also being able to explain it. Not all business, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses, right? All business owners, the sales brain functions differently than the mathematic brain, right? So having a bookkeeper who can explain it to you in terms that you're gonna understand, so that when you do look at your financials, you know what you're looking at, you understand it, and that allows you to make those educated business decisions. And then I have also seen where people have overpaid in their taxes. What does that mean? Even sales tax. They saw a number come out, they thought that was the one that they should use, and they overpaid. Now what do I do? So that makes a difference with your cash flow, right? If you have overpaid on something, it always takes longer to get it back than it does for it to go out. So those are things to keep in mind, knowing where those sources of information are, so that when you are working towards that compliance factor and filing it on time, you're also using the correct information to do so.
Questions? Yes. So I have clients that I've told year after year, at some point they're going to get that punch in the face. You're going to have to screw up the check. Mm-hmm. You would help educate them and observe so that they can get in front of it, so we don't have to retroactively go back in time. We can take care of it so that we don't have hair on fire.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, one of the things that I recommend for business owners is, even if you're not a business owner, a corporation that has to file those quarterly tax estimates, are you looking at what those numbers are to realize what you're going to be paying in taxes? You're still going to have to pay taxes whether you're a corporation or a sole proprietor. So if you know what those numbers are, you can plan accordingly. Each quarter, it's important. No, what I do doesn't actually have to be licensed in any state, so I do help businesses across the United States. It's a lot easier to meet in person with ones that are here in North Carolina, but there are a lot of teleconference options to meet with ones who are interested. I do not. There's a lot of liability with that. And like Shawn, understanding that there are companies who can do that better and track that better. But what I do know is I've worked with, even run the payroll through those services before, so I know what it looks like on their portal, what those business owners are going to be looking at, or what their payroll staff is going to be looking at. So it can help them with functionality, finding a good fit for them, how things look on the paycheck stub so they can explain it to their employees. I've worked with a lot of them, and so I can make a recommendation on ones that can be a good fit for what that business is. Because the only intimidating numbers are the ones you don't know.
I know you guys are all excited about the IT portion of this presentation, right? Yeah. That's right. Keep the bad guys out. That's right.
I can help finance that.
That's right.
Mustang.
There you go. There you go. So as far as your IT, who has a data backup recovery plan in place? I know you do. You think you do? iCloud, okay. What about antivirus? I know you do, right? Good. Well, a lot of companies don't think of those things, and that's one of the things that we try to bring into the mix is being proactive on the maintenance of your network. And again, that's whether it's one computer or 50 computers. And also, it doesn't that all the employees don't have to be in the same building as typical companies are. Especially now since COVID, we're doing a lot of work from home places. So, isn't it also interesting that with COVID, the amount of hacking has significantly increased? And why is that? Because when you're working from home, you don't have the same security that you do when you're in the office, especially if you have a big office, right? Where they have a firewall and, all kinds of antivirus and things in place. And you start working from home and your data is now at risk, more so because you're logging in to the company's data, but you're not using a virtual private network a lot of the times. So that's some of the things that we have to think about, and we talk to our customers about is what does your work environment look like now, and especially when they start scaling, because a lot of companies that we're talking to, in fact, I'm having a conversation with a virtual investment group where they're looking to expand, and he said everybody that they hire from here on out is going to be working remote, and they're all over the United States. And I'm like, well, what plans do you have in place to protect the data that you've collected so far, and how are you going to protect that when you get with these new customer or new employees? So that's certainly something that you have to think about. Another thing that we talk about is, are you going to be a Microsoft office or a Google Workspace office? A lot of people start when they're a solopreneur with Gmail because it's free, and then they start to scale. And that's typically when they start making a decision of moving from Google Workspace to Microsoft, because Microsoft is more of a business environment as far as their services go. But and that the vast majority of the world uses Microsoft. So if you're using Google Workspace, and they have very similar, Excel and Word documents and that, but they don't communicate with other Microsoft products very well. They don't talk to each other very well. So that's when a lot of people say, a lot of my clients now have Microsoft. I need to switch back to Microsoft. And there are a lot of solutions that are included in that we work with. Dropsuite as far as backing up your company data, OneDrive, SharePoint, that you're already paying for when you get a Microsoft license. And then they have a new product with Dropsuite where you can back up QuickBooks. And it just gives you one more layer of protection should something happen with the bad guys. So and they're out there, and like I said, I think in one of the presentations, they operate as a big corporation. They have employee of the month, They have yearly and quarterly reviews of how well they're doing with their boss. So they are a very sophisticated organization. They're not little Jimmy in his closet in the basement hacking into people, seeing what he can do, what he can find. They are extremely efficient in what they're doing. So that's a lot of the stuff that we talk about with them. And then data recovery and disaster recovery. Make sure you have a cloud backup. Make sure it's the rule of three. Do you have a cloud backup? Do you have your data that's on your server, your computer, whatever it is, and then you want to have a local network product or backup as well, so that if something happens in the cloud and you can't get the cloud because the internet is down, you have your local backup. If something catches on fire, you've got the cloud. You've got your other backup or your other iteration of your data. So again, if you don't have your data, 90% of us don't have a business because we're stuck, and we don't know where to go, and we don't have the data to charge our customers, know which customers we want to target, all that kind of fun stuff. So there's a lot that can be considered and especially as you start scaling, these things you get more and more people in your work environment, and not all of them are going to be computer savvy. Not all of them are going to be trustworthy enough not to click on the email. There's a statistic out there. It's like 7% of employees, no matter how much training you provide, will still click on that email or still open that link. So that is the gateway into your data and your environment. Your data is by human error. No matter all the great solutions that IT has, they still have we still have humans out there, and we are the weak link when it comes to IT. So you got to have that data recovery backup in place, the disaster recovery, as well as all the other solutions that we can offer. So I'm happy to chat with anybody moving forward as we go with as you start scaling or hearing of other customers, we'll be happy to have those conversations. So, any question? You got a question?
Not necessarily a question, but I utilize some of the things that Paul offers with NerdsToGo, and I love some of the software options that you provide and then make recommendations on based on what the needs are.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on is trying to, instead of having, here's 3 plans, pick one that fits your budget or whatever. It's like we sit down with our customers, have a conversation of what specifically are you looking for, what's your priorities, and we can bring a whole host of solutions. Two that Nikki's talking about is a password wallet. So I'm even afraid to ask this question: who uses the password wallet in their Google and Chrome or Edge? Do we save our passwords in that? Good. Yay. Because if they can hack into your computer, they're going to hack into your password wallet, because your password is not going to be encrypted. So with the password wallet that we always put in our initial offering has a dual encrypted situation where your main password is encrypted, and then where all your passwords, that's stored in a separate servers. So they're dually encrypted. So if one gets hacked, they still can't get to the other. So and then that way you also get to have the passwords that are 20 characters long that nobody would remember, instead of using your dog's name, his birthday, and exclamation point, right? Because that's pretty much what everybody uses, for their yeah. So that way, and again, you can change it. It automatically, asks you to change your password. It'll automatically save it. So all you have to do is remember one password. And then all the other passwords can be 20 characters long. So there's a lot of different things that are out there that are not expensive that, that can really up your security of your data. So, because like I said, here at NerdsToGo, we're securing the World Wide Web one computer at a time. Yep. And then, do you want to do Joe? So our commercial line of real estate agent is Joe Lane. He's with Pruitt Keener. He's been doing this for, I think, 22 years now. He's very, very knowledgeable about the industry. Does a lot of with the just specific products that are out there for businesses, making sure that you have your general liability, making sure that your assets are, as he likes to say, covered. He wants to cover your assets. And then there's a whole line of different products that he provides, workers' comp and that. The one nice thing about Pruitt Keener is that he works with a wide range of carriers, so that he doesn't have to limited by one company, State Farm, whatever it is. So he's got a wide range of products that he can bring and companies that he can bring, again, to fit your needs and your company's needs versus trying to fit what he has into your business. So, is there anything else on Joe?
Probably the big one. Just remember though, if you're scaling your business, being able to understand what is it that I have to protect. Workers' comp can come to a point, right? You start having head count. There's a minimum number. Once you hit that number, you have to have it. So these are where it comes into play, where you have to kind of know if you're scaling, who to talk to, make sure that everything is protected. Because what nobody ever wants to do is have something happen and then you lose it all because we didn't have the correct protection.
And that's a great point. He actually brought it to my attention when I was opening up my business. He was like, with the workers' comp, he said, don't just include your employees, you need to include yourself as well, because if you get hurt in an accident or whatever, what's going to happen? And so I had not even thought about that. So that's a great point that he's brought up. And then the business interruption policies that he has. I mean, that's again kind of what we get back is we try not to have that interruption, but there's still there's still that one person out there that can click on something. So. Cyber insurance. Yep. And we actually work with a company that if you purchase their stack of products, there's like 5 or 7 products, they will help you get cyber insurance through carriers that they work with. And it's like $1,200 a month, $1,250 a month for like $1 million security. So it's a nice way, because cyber insurance is, if anyone's tried to get it, it's incredibly hard to get. So, and we can work with helping keep people on HIPAA compliant. There's things you guys have to do. There's the board that you have to keep in contact with, right, for compliance on the finance world. So a lot of the products we have are geared toward those as well. All right. So there. Any general questions? I'm going to hire Joe, by the way, because he's going to be my next tech, because we didn't have the slide deck and then Joe pulled it up on his phone. So.
Make stuff happen. But like I said, if you guys don't have any questions, the biggest thing I want anybody to take away, whether you're trying to expand or start your business or whatever the case may be, is to have a team of people that you can trust. Because if you're trying to grow, you need to kind of look at all vantage points. And as a business owner, you may not be the expert in every category, right? You're expert at what you do. Find trusted people that are experts at what they do to give you the information you need so you can make the best decisions for you and your business, because not all businesses are built the same. So if you take nothing else, know there are people that you can trust. And if you're trying to scale, trust them and ask for that advice so you can make the best decisions possible.